It was the kind of favor you don't think twice about. My best friend, Aaron, asked me to house sit while his family went on a week-long vacation to Greece. I'd been to their place more times than I could count. Weekend hangouts, movie nights, lazy summer afternoons. It felt familiar, almost like a second home. So when he handed me the keys with a laugh and a "don't burn the place down," I smiled and promised to treat it like my own. The house was quiet in a way that made every creak of the wood and hum of the fridge sound louder than it should. By the second night, I had settled into a rhythm: wake up late, make coffee in the sunlit kitchen, feed their cat Mango, then sprawl on the couch with a book or series. I wasn't doing anything particularly productive, but it felt peaceful. Detached from everything, that was, until the memories started creeping in. Aaron's dad, Mr. Carson, had always been this distant figure to me. Charming, composed, with a quiet presence that lingered in the room even when he wasn't saying much. He worked long hours, traveled often, and didn't speak much when we crossed paths. Still, I noticed things. The way he stood at the stove, focused and calm. The soft, thoughtful smile he'd flash when talking to his wife. The way he carried himself, firm, self-assured, like nothing rattled him. Over time, that quiet admiration turned into something more confusing, something I never dared say out loud. Of course, he wasn't supposed to be home. The whole family was out of the country. That was the agreement. I spent my third night watching reruns, half asleep under a blanket, when the sound of keys turning in the front door made me bolt upright. For a second, I thought I imagined it. Then the door creaked open, and footsteps echoed softly across the tiles. I froze. He stepped into the hallway, setting a small duffel bag down beside him. It was Mr. Carson. We stared at each other, both stunned, the silence stretching between us like a taut wire. He looked tired, dark circles under his eyes, shirt slightly wrinkled, the kind of weariness that goes deeper than jet lag. "I didn't know anyone would be here," he said finally, voice low but not unkind. I was house-sitting. Aaron asked me to." He nodded slowly, gaze unreadable. "Plans changed. I had to come back early." I opened my mouth to ask more, but the words didn't come. Instead, he walked past me, offering a small, distant smile before disappearing, down the hallway. And just like that, everything felt different. The house wasn't quiet anymore. It was heavy, with unsaid things, with past thoughts I tried to forget, and a presence I never expected to face alone. That night, as I lay on the couch staring at the ceiling, I told myself nothing would happen. But deep down, I already knew better. The next morning felt unfamiliar, like waking up in someone else's story. Sunlight poured through the blinds, catching dust in the air, and for a moment, I forgot he was there. Then I heard the soft clink of a mug in the kitchen. I sat up, heart already unsettled, like I was trespassing in a place I'd been invited to. Mr. Carson was standing by the counter, pouring coffee, dressed in a plain gray t-shirt and joggers. The casualness made him look younger, more human than the polished man I remembered. He looked up, nodded once. "Morning. Hope I didn't scare you last night." "A little," I admitted, managing a half smile. "Didn't expect anyone to come back." He handed me a mug without asking how I liked it. It was strong, bitter, but grounding. "I cut the trip short," he said, settling into a bar stool. "Didn't really feel like being there." I didn't push for more. There was a heaviness in his voice that made me tread carefully. Instead, I sat across from him, sipping in silence, feeling like I was part of something delicate. Mango, the yell. Cat brushed past our legs, oblivious to the quiet tension curling in the room. The hours that followed unfolded with an odd sense of rhythm. We stayed out of each other's way, but never far. He worked on his laptop in the dining room while I read in the living room. We spoke in fragments, commenting on the rain, the cat, the neighborhood, but something unspoken threaded through each exchange. That night, the storm started. Rain pelted the windows, and the power flickered once, twice, then cut out entirely. I found candles in the kitchen drawers and lit them carefully, the soft glow casting long shadows across the walls. He joined me on the couch without a word, 2 glasses of whiskey in hand. Figured we might as well make the most of it. The silence between us wasn't awkward anymore. It felt like something waiting. He asked about my plans, school, work, life. I answered honestly, more than I thought I would. Then he talked. About long flights, the feeling of coming home to an empty house, the quiet disappointments that gather over time in a marriage that stopped working years ago. He didn't sound bitter, just tired. And then he said, almost too quietly, "Sometimes it's easier to talk to someone who isn't supposed to matter." I looked at him then, really looked, not as my friend's dad or some distant figure I admired, but as a man, alone, unraveling, real. Something stirred in my chest, and I couldn't tell if it was sympathy or something dangerously close to desire. He held my gaze for a moment too long, then stood. "Good night," he said, his voice unreadable. As he walked away, my pulse still, thudding in my ears, I knew this wasn't just an awkward overlap anymore. It was the start of something I wasn't ready to name. The days that followed moved like slow tides, steady, quiet, but charged with a current neither of us acknowledged. We existed in the same space but danced around each other like the air might catch fire if we got too close. The moments stretched longer. Every glance lingered a beat too long. Every word seemed weighed down with something unspoken. I caught him watching me one morning as I dried my hair at the kitchen sink. He didn't look away, didn't even flinch when I turned to meet his gaze. He just offered a faint smile, one that didn't quite reach his eyes, then went back to reading the paper. But that look stayed with me, threaded into every breath, every step I took in that house. One night, he dozed off on the couch, his arm draped over his eyes, the television humming softly in the background. I walked over quietly, blanket in hand, intending nothing more than a simple gesture. As I leaned down to cover him, my fingers grazed his arm. He stirred, eyes blinking open slowly, and for a moment we were face to face in the dim blue glow of the screen. Neither of us moved. My hand lingered longer than it should have. His eyes searched mine, uncertain, vulnerable, wanting. The world felt so still I could hear the sound of my own breath. I wanted to step back. I should have. Instead, he sat up, the blanket sliding to the floor. "I shouldn't," he began, voice a soft fracture. "Then don't," I whispered. And just like that, we crossed it. That line drawn by loyalty, by age, by everything decent. He kissed me, slow and hesitant, like he was afraid of what it might mean. I kissed him back, not thinking about consequences, not thinking about Aaron, not thinking at all. Just feeling. It lasted only a minute. No words, no promises. Just the weight of something fragile, shattering. He pulled away first, standing abruptly. His hands trembled as he rubbed his face. "This can't happen," he said quietly, almost to himself. I nodded, but something in my chest cracked. The next morning, he didn't speak to me, barely looked in my direction. He stayed holed up in his office, door shut, curtains drawn. I packed my bag earlier than planned. The air in the house had shifted, no longer humming with tension, but thick with guilt. I left the spare key on the counter and took one last glance at the hallway before closing the door behind me. I told myself I could forget it, that it was just a moment, one no one had to know. But I didn't even make it halfway home before my phone buzzed. A message from Aaron, short and sharp. "What did you do?" My throat went dry. Somehow, he knew. And just like that, the line we crossed came crashing back to claim everything. I stared at Aaron's message for a long time, the words burning against the screen. What did you do? There was no context, no explanation, just the kind of question that came with certainty. Somehow, he knew. Whether through instinct or something else, I couldn't tell. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, but nothing I could type felt right. Nothing could undo what had already been done. Back at my apartment, the silence pressed in heavier than the storm from nights ago. I kept reliving the moment, Mr. Carson's touch, the kiss, the quiet regret that followed. It hadn't been premeditated. It hadn't even felt wrong in the moment. It had felt like two lonely people colliding in a house that held too many shadows. But now, in the clarity of daylight, shame curled around my ribs like a tightening belt. The second message came an hour later. Dad told me, "I don't want to see you again." I didn't realize how much I cared about Aaron's opinion until I felt it break me. He hadn't even asked why. He hadn't let me explain. Maybe there was nothing to explain, just the cold truth, that trust once broken is rarely repaired. 3 days passed before I heard from Mr. Carson again. The message was short, almost clinical. "I've told Aaron everything. I'm sorry. This was a mistake. Please don't contact me." I sat with that sentence for a long time, reading it again and again. It didn't hurt the way I thought it would, not like a knife, but like a slow unraveling. Like watching something precious slip through your fingers, while you just stood there. In the weeks that followed, the silence from both of them remained. Aaron blocked me on every platform. Mr. Carson disappeared from my world like a ghost. I kept playing the story over in my head, wondering what I could have done differently, wondering if it ever meant anything more than an escape for him, or for me. But the truth, I realized, wasn't about meaning. It was about boundaries, about crossing them, about the cost of breaking something sacred in a moment of vulnerability. Love, or what we thought might have been love, had come dressed in loneliness and longing, and betrayal had worn the same disguise. I don't hate him. I don't even hate myself. But I carry the weight of that week like a scar, one that doesn't show, but one I feel every time I pass Aaron's house or hear his name. Sometimes, late at night, I wonder if Mr. Carson thinks about it too. If he feels guilt, or if he's simply moved on, locked the door behind him like it never happened. Either way, I know better now. Some connections are meant to be imagined, not lived. Some doors, once opened, lead only to ruin, and some truths, no matter how quiet, echo for a lifetime.